Also, this week, our study of Constantine, Tuesday night, Agora, 7 o'clock, 51st Memorial. Check that out. And then in 2 weeks, on Tuesday, the Church Basement Roadshow, which is basically some different authors that have been writing about what is the future of the church and some of the things and concepts that you've probably heard through Rivendell. We'll be discussing some of those things, and that's going to be at Braden Park Baptist Church, where Dino is at. He's been a big part of helping bringing that in. So if you want more information about that, it's on our email list we send out. If you don't get our email newsletter and you want to, drop a note in the offering bowl back there with your email on it.
Just to clarify, you said 2 weeks from next coming Tuesday, right?
It's the 15th, I think. Yeah, so is that the 15th?
Yes.
The 15th is the road show. So, also, back here on the back table by the offering bowl, there are these green directories provided by Rebecca that are free to pick up. So hopefully you care about these issues and things like that, and you can pick one of those up to know about more things you can do here in the Tulsa area to support different things. So be sure to pick one of those up. Any other announcements, invitations?
Let's pray together. God, we love to trust our lives to you. It is so hard for us. So God, we just admit we don't have control over everything we think we have control over. And we fight for control over things that we shouldn't have control over. God, we pledge our lives to you. And we trust in you because you are good. Jesus even said that. He said, "Why do you call me good? God alone is good." God, we entrust to you these people that we've sent overseas. Pray you would be with them, that you would touch them.
You are holy, you are righteous, you are mighty. Yeah. How great your kindness is to us. How great your mercy is to us. How great your healing is to us. The great love, Father.
Genesis, from the very beginning, from the start, the way that the story opens, the narrative opens. We have spent 3 weeks so far on Genesis 1, and we are on verse 3. That's just kind of disheartening a little bit.
Why?
I don't know, but it is. I actually kind of had all those on, Chad.
Oh, sorry.
Thanks, baby.
My bad.
Thanks, Chad.
You want to turn that front one off? I get what you're doing now. I'm sorry. It's one of those side ones, I think.
That one? That one? Oh, I got it. Yeah, that's that one. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's it. Wow, yes, that's it. Hey, so if you want to follow along, pull out a copy of Genesis. There are a handful of Bibles around. Most of the Bibles that are in the back are going to trick you because they're just New Testaments, but there's a joke there that's not worth saying. But Genesis chapter 1, I have a copy on the screen. Let's work our way through it. And just to backpedal none at all, here's why we're doing this. The beginning of the story shapes everything. How you understand the story to begin changes everything. My daughter has gotten into this thing where almost every night she wants us to tell her a baby story. Tell me more baby stories. Because somehow that fills in some information she doesn't have. And I remember those stories, and they affect how I see her, even if I'm not cognizant of it all the time. And we have all this stuff we say is true. And often we just ignore where it came from. Or we don't let it teach us. Or we don't let it shape us. And so we're opening up Scripture and letting the narrative speak. Again, in case you haven't heard me say this yet, we're just reading the Bible is what we're doing. I'm not going to read back into it your favorite author or your favorite theologian. I'm not going to do any of that stuff. You're welcome to believe that. I'm not here to argue with you about that at all. But don't force Genesis to say something it doesn't say, is my big issue. Let the text say what it says. We say we follow the Bible. I wonder what that means. All right, so we're in Genesis chapter 1. We need to read the first 2 verses, even though we've already covered them. Somebody read Genesis 1:1 for me.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth.
Tag.
Now the earth Vavohu. And darkness was upon the face of the Tehom, and the Spirit of God hovered over the face of the waters.
That's all we've gotten done so far. You don't think we could have done more, but that's okay. I'm proud of us. I'm excited about it. And for the record, this is a discussion, right? This deal works? Right? Okay, good. All right, let's jump in. Verse 3. Somebody read that out loud.
And God said, let there be light, and there was light.
God speaks, and there's light. Nowhere does it say Elohim fashioned, Elohim formed, Elohim lit, Elohim struck, Elohim shaped, Elohim dug, Elohim reached. Elohim calls. The message says, God said, light! Or you could read it as more of a drill sergeant thing, light! You know, whatever. And light just shows up. It almost sounds like a person, right? Light, what? I mean, that's kind of what's happening here. Light just shows up. Isn't that weird?
It's wonderful.
I think it is wonderful, but it's just unusual. God speaks, and it happens. Why is that significant? Is it significant? Maybe it's not. Maybe it's insignificant.
It baffles me that there wasn't light before. That always baffles me. I mean, maybe he is his own light, but I was like, is he dark?
What was there that needed light for this?
The only things before this were Tohu Vavohu and the Tehom. And right, Tohu Vavohu, if you were here last week, that's the Hebrew. It's chaos and desolateness. It's waste and welter. It's uncreated, and yet it's a word that comes back to talk about creation. So it's unlivable. It's not, you can't live in it. And the Tehom is the deep, they call the deep, and it's this abyss that only the divine can control. When the Tehom affects humans, bad things happen usually. Occasionally.
Actually, I'm not sure how Tehom is used through the whole, but I often personally will read them as the same thing. That the Tohu was deep, and that's what he's talking. But that's my own take on it for that passage.
Well, and that's a totally deep way to read it, man. Sorry, that was really bad. Okay, so why does God, what grabs you about this? God said, let there be light, and there was light.
Reminds me of the centurion in the New Testament, where Jesus says, I'll come, and the centurion says, you don't have to. You just speak it, it will happen.
There is something powerful about the spoken word. Now, there's just something uncanny about speaking something into being. And we all know we speak things into being, right? You had that friend that would always say, oh, I know I can't do this. I know I'll fail the test. I know I'm going to fail the test. And lo and behold, they failed the test. That self-fulfilling prophecy. If you've ever worked with children, you know if you can get a child to say, I can do it, it changes something in them. You can speak words into a kid's life. I dreaded this. When I was in youth ministry, we had this camp that I had to go to that was, and I never went to camp growing up. I mean, I went to camp, I think, 1 year for Sky Ranch or whatever it was. It was cute, fun, terrible. And this camp we did for kids was for 3rd through 8th graders, and they were all in the same group. I had like a group had 8th, 7th, 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd graders in it. Now, if you think that's bad, the real problem was it was led by high school students. And they were, I'm just saying, my high school students were really good at this. It was really good for them. But I had these 6th graders and 7th graders that were almost there, and they thought they were in charge. I had this one boy that was just having a miserable time. It was making everybody in his group miserable. And I pulled him aside, and I said, do you know why you're in this group? That's exactly what he said. And I wanted to say, because we couldn't find another group to put you in. But I decided not to. I said, because we needed a leader in this group. Ooh. I know. But it worked. By Wednesday, he was a different kid. He went home with like 2 awards or something because it turned him. He saw the world differently.
Part of what it does is it shows God, rather than being distant and as an authoritative figure, in relationship with creation. So it's the speaking to to, and as you said, it's almost like light says what?
So there's a relatedness
Light
of
doesn't show up in this
relationship.
box.
Absolutely.
I don't want to read too much into this, but
Too late.
in some ways, is light the first act of God being graceful? Because He doesn't necessarily need light, but we do to see things.
Well, the rabbi sure saw it. I don't know that they would use the word grace, but they say the first element God creates is the one of meaning and truth, light. And what's interesting here is by creating light, what also shows up? Darkness, right? I mean, you can't have light not have dark. God saw the light and saw that it was good. God divided the light from the darkness. I want to talk about a couple of things. First of all, the dividing. You're going to see in Genesis 1, 3 through the rest of the chapter, God does this a lot. God divides things a lot. God separates things a lot. Part of that is some things just don't go together. It's chaos if they go together. That somehow separating them makes them good. Letting them stay together isn't. And so, and you know, you think about whose story this is first. Before it's ours, it's the Jews. And they know about dividing things, right? Kosher. You keep certain things separate. And it's a way of honoring God. It's a way of being faithful to God, the separateness. Also in that is this phrase right here. God saw the light and saw that it was good. It was good. How was your pizza? It was good. How was work yesterday? Good. How's your mom? Good. We have this really generic good word. It's not good. It's wow. God looks at it and says, wow, that's good. I quoted it in a prayer earlier. A guy asked Jesus a question. It's the rich young ruler thing, I think. He says to him, teacher, he says, good teacher, why do you call me good? God alone is good. Now, there's some interpretive issues going on there. But God looks at this and says, this is good. This is wow. God almost sounds a little surprised. Like, wow. Like when your kids behave in front of other people. It's like, wow. So God sees the light, sees that it was good, divides the light from the darkness. And God called the light
Day.
and called the darkness he called
Night.
And there was. Why is evening first? It's a real simple reason. What?
At the end of the day, it took them all day.
That's not how they would read it.
Yeah.
Because they were dark first and light.
Because the Hebrews count evening first. Like right now is Sunday day. When's Sunday night for us? At sundown, which will be sometime around midnight tonight probably. Right? It takes forever for the sun to go down. For them, Sunday night is the night that preceded the day. So we've already had Sunday night. Now we're having Sunday day. And then tonight, yeah, and that's exactly right. At sundown, it becomes Monday night. In their calendar, their mindset. And even today, even Reformed Jews, they don't count like that, right? But they kind of have it in their mind because of Passover. Because of Sabbath. They kind of keep track of all that. So the darkness happens, and then there's day, one night, one day, and it's one day, day one, first day. First day is probably more accurate. Something's different on this day. See if you can find it. Somebody read it for me.
And God said, let there be a firmament in the midst of the waters, and let it divide the waters from the waters.
Okay, let's do a little diagramming here. First of all, you remember when we started, we had, what do we have when God shows up? We've got tohu vabohu, which we called chaos. Is that chaotic enough for us?
More colors, please.
I'm getting to that. I don't want to put my green on my blue. So we've got chaos and we've got the deep, and then God shows up and light is the first creation. I can't draw light, and I'm not going to try. We're just going to go with that. And then, what gets created? A firmament. The word there is, you may know it?
Yeah, it's rakia.
Rakia. The rakia. It literally, oh, now I tested this. It worked fine. Green is always that color. Yeah, would you go get me a... I'm not spitting. Yeah, Laura poured water on the floor there. Excellent. So God creates a rakia. The word rakia is literally a hammered out sheet kind of thing. It would be like you took out, it's like you had this material and you hammered it out. We might translate it vault, like a vaulted ceiling. You with me there? Right? Nobody thinks I'm playing with them.
The base word there is raka.
Raka!
And raka is an onomatopoeic word, which means it sounds, the word sounds like the action. And the sound is like a blacksmith or a metalsmith's hammer hitting metal. Raka. It bounces, so you get the double sound. And then rakia is something made out of that process. So it's actually a hammered sheet or ball.
Boy, I test them. That's Steve, can we afford to? Good. Well, because he cares about these kind of things. That'll keep me from using green again. Because I tested it with blue. So anyhow, here's the deal. You're not going to be able to see anything now that I draw. Who cares? The first thing God creates is this rakia, a vault, a hammered out sheet, right? Something there. And what is the purpose of it? To divide the waters, right? There's water. I need my green. There's water down here. And there's water up there too. I'm short, so I can't draw it really well. I drew the rakia too high. But that's water. Just go with it. What water is in the sky?
It's going to be the flood water, isn't it?
It's the same water that causes the flood. Where does that come from? Water, rain, right. These people are not stupid. They know what water comes from the sky. There's all kinds of theories in ancient cosmologies about how that happens. But they know there's water in the sky, and they know it comes down, and they know that somehow they're connected because they don't die every time it rains. Right? Do they understand evaporation? Well, no, probably not, but they may understand something. What'd you say?
I always remembering all the transports.
God, you're way ahead of me. See, that was so long ago. So, we're dividing the waters from the waters. Somebody read verse 7.
And God made the firmament and divided the waters which were under the firmament from the waters which were above the firmament, and it was so.
Do you notice something? Doesn't that sound like this? Don't they sound similar? You're going to notice the repetition. Pay attention to it. So there's verse 7. God creates the firmament that divides the waters from the waters. Verse 8.
And God called the firmament heaven, and there was evening and there was morning, second day.
What's different about this day? What did God not say? Nothing is called good. God doesn't look at the firmament and say, ooh, that's good. God doesn't look at the divided waters and say, that's good. I don't know that there's there are a lot of things people say about that. I don't know that any of it's worth our time. I just think it's really interesting. I think it's really compelling, actually. I don't know. I'm curious. So, let's keep moving on. Ooh, I took it on my vacation. No, just kidding. Okay. Read that for me.
And God said, let the waters under the heaven be gathered together unto one place, and let the dry land appear. And it was so. And God called the dry land earth, and the gathering together of the waters he called the seas. And God saw that it was good.
So God gathers together water into one place, brings all the water over here, and I can start shaping it to look like something cool, but I'm not that smooth. And then God creates the land here. Now, don't go all Pangea on me, right? Okay, I'm just drawing. I have the artistic skills of a 2-year-old, right? I know that. So, he separates them. You hear it again? The separation? Because what happens when water comes on land? Bad things, right? We end up having to drive over there and help mud out the house. That's right. What else grabs you? What else is going on here?
It doesn't actually say that he created the land. It just says that it appeared.
Let the dry land appear. You're right. That's true. Part of the idea would be that the waters were just all pulled off of it. Separated. You can go all Moses on it. Okay.
But you didn't actually talk about creating the water. You just separated.
Well, wasn't it all created when the very first is created, and then starts separating?
He doesn't bother to verify.
Yeah, this goes back to Genesis. Genesis 1 does, okay, let's start over. Back in the day, when Hebrew was a language that was alive, people would speak to each other in Hebrew. What they didn't do is they didn't write it down. Hebrew was spoken long before it was written. That's just the way it was. These good people talked to each other with their language. When they bothered to finally start writing it down, paper and ink, as they knew it, was really rare and doggone expensive, and these were poor people. So what did they do to help save paper and ink? A compression algorithm.
Whether you want to call it that or not.
Yeah, whether or not you see it that way or not, they didn't do the vowels. They just completely left out the vowels. How scientific can a language be if the vowels can be left out? Completely. They are not trying to give you a science experiment explanation, right? If you do a science experiment and you want to win first prize, you've got to explain how it did, what it did, why it did, what it did, what that process proves, and what the outcomes of all that are. They're not interested in any of that. They're interested in a narrative of answering, who are we? Who is this God? What does it mean to be human? Where do we come from? Why does mommy cry when she gives birth and the cow doesn't? Right? I mean, that's what they're after. And these narratives are speaking these deep truths, but they just aren't interested in the same questions we're asking. It just doesn't occur to them to say, now, was it a condensation kind of event? It's the only scientific word I can come up with. I'm sorry. All right, so God called the dry land earth, and He called together the waters, and He called them seas. And again, God says, wow, this is good. I've got them separated. That's good, because you can live there now. You couldn't live in it before, apparently. But now life can happen. Somehow that separation is critical to that. Verse 11. Somebody read for me, please.
God said, let the earth put forth grass, yielding seed, and fruit tree bearing fruit after its time, wherein the seed thereof on the earth, and it was so. And the earth brought forth grass, yielding seed after its time, and tree bearing fruit, wherein is the seed thereof after its time, and God saw that it was good. And there was evening, and there was morning, and there was day.
These are plants. I spent lots of time on that. Where does the grass come from? The earth. God says, let the earth bring this forward. The earth brings forward grass, herb-yielding seed, tree-bearing fruit. God says, earth, give life.
So, the seeds were in the earth, and the earth was in water, and all of that was in the book.
I think that would be reading something there that I don't think is being asked. That's where you and I might see that real differently. I get where that's going, real quick, and I don't have a problem with it necessarily. Part of what I think you want to hear in this chapter is, did God create the seed? Does it say, does the story say, God created each individual seed of its kind? I know that was a confrontational question. I apologize. Does it say that? I'm not saying that God didn't create the seed. Don't hear that. I said day one, I believe God created everything. I'm pretty convinced of it. But I'm not convinced of it from this chapter. I'm convinced from other things. This chapter is going to say God created one thing. Watch for
Can
it.
I ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So then what would the word be put forth and brought forth? Because that's the action there.
Ask me that another way to make sure I'm hearing what you're saying.
Okay, in the verses 11 and 12, his action is, it says
And
Yes.
then it says, and the earth brought forth. So what would that word be?
I don't know. I don't have the Hebrew.
Okay.
I don't have it on my computer because you take all the time.
Tell us.
What?
Tell us next week.
Okay. Good to know. You know what? That's actually going to be important. Dan.
You know what? I do a lot of things kind of out of sequence, you know. I've always said it's the first really book of faith, the first chapter of Genesis. You really read over it. But you've all lied, but now you ain't nothing.
Right. Somebody caught it already. Good. We've got light. We don't have the sun yet.
Sun yet. Well, my own little thing on that, it's got pretty selfish. It's not the way you do it in life.
Right.
And, you know, separating that way you do the evil. But that's just my thing here. But the earth, he put, you know, he brought forth also these things. He had the earth bring forth without seed because they received bearing plants. So they began to create the seed and they were there. And well, again, it's backwards. It's not out there, there's nothing here to nourish these. Right.
Well, and I appreciate what you're saying there also about. I need to write this down. There's an order going on here, and it's an obvious order, but it's not obvious to us because we think linear. We think project, right? Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. We're do-it-yourself people. We think construction, build the foundation, build the frame, put on the roof, put on the drywall. That's not what's going on here at all. When we get to it, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the order they're working in. And it is an act of faith. The very creation itself is an act of faith. God shows up and says, let's see what happens. And God knew how it was going to be. Great. It's still an act of faith. It's still an act of faith. I like that. The other thing was, God looks at all this fruit bearing, all the earth giving life, and God says it's good. God says, wow, that's good. That's good. I got to stop on this picture. Do you know where this picture was taken from? Mars. We took this picture from Mars.
This would be the royal league, right?
No, me and a friend. Yeah. We humans. But, you know, I guess that's kind of my point. We humans did that. We went to Mars and looked back and took a picture. There's something about that just really humbles me. And it really ties in for me. And God said, let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven. So, God says, let there be lights. Where are the lights? In the firmament, in our vault, there are lights. So, here's this one, and here's the other one. A couple interesting things here to divide. And you'll notice, first of all, what the lights are there to do. Divide day from night. Divide. Let them be signs for seasons. Separate the seasons. For years and for days and years. Let them be for light in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth. And it was so. And God made the two great lights. The greater light to rule the day, the lesser light to rule the night. He's talking about the sun and the moon. Notice he doesn't name them. Yeah, he gets to the stars too. You notice they don't name sun and moon.
Okay, question. Is that the moon or is that Venus?
Hey, don't near. I wasn't there.
I'm thinking so that would be Venus.
Oh,
That's Venus. That can't be. Forgive me. That can't be Venus.
I think it's the moon.
Do you think it's the moon?
Given if they haven't played with the ratio, then that's got to be the moon. Otherwise, Venus would be so far away that everything would be shot.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Anyhow, back to ancient history. Because they talked about that all the time in ancient Mesopotamia. Part of what's going on is these stories are being written down, and they're pushing off against other creation accounts. All these other religions they'll run into, particularly in captivity under the Babylonians. All these other religions worship these other gods, right? You've heard of Ra, the sun god. You've heard of Luna, the moon god. The sun and the moon were gods in other religions. And Genesis goes out of its way in Genesis 1 not to name them. They have words for sun and moon. And won't do it. It's not criticizing it. It's just saying, isn't that interesting? And the stars are there too. I didn't draw stars, but just trust me, they're there. You can't see them because the sun's out right now. Somebody read verse 17 and 18, please.
And God set them in the firmament of the heaven to give light upon the earth, and to rule over the day and over the night, and to divide the light from the darkness.
You hear it again, the divide. You hear the divide. God saw that it was. Wow. And I would like y'all to say good in a way that doesn't sound like you're talking about your chili. It's good. It's good. It was good! Yeah, that rocks. Okay. And there was evening and there was morning, and that's day 4. I want to go ahead and push my way all through all of them real quick, and then we'll do worship. God said, let the waters swarm. Ooh. This is kind of interesting. Part of what's interesting is they see a connectedness, right, between these waters and these waters. They see a connectedness between birds and fish. Which, you know, makes sense. If you take a fish and pull all those scales off and glue some feathers on, it looks stupid, but it kind of No, that's not the first time people have said that. Even in science, there are some really, really old science books, early science books, that try to see a connection between invertebrates and fish. What did I just say?
Vertebrates.
Vertebrates and fish.
They are vertebrates.
Yeah.
They're
I just.
Yeah.
I'm old. You're not old.
No, I just teach it.
Well, that helps too. See, it helps to have smart people around you. You're done, you just float on them. So let the waters swarm with living creatures. Let the fowl fly above the earth, the open firmament of heaven. And God created this great sea monsters and every living creature that creepeth. You're going to hear creepeth again in a second. And not about where the waters swarm. And God sees that it's good. So God says, let there be creatures. And so there's fish. That's not Jesus. That's a fish. That's a bird. Go with it.
A bird? The bird thing. It's a lamb.
To not be. Okay. So, and then all that happens, and God blessed them and says, be fruitful and multiply. I didn't make you say it. Sorry, back up. And God saw that it was. Yay! All right, you're getting there. And God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply. Fill the waters and the seas. Let fowl multiply in the earth. And there was evening and there was morning. What day? 5. That was 5th day. And God said, let the earth bring forth living creatures, cattle, creeping things, beasts of the earth, and it was so. And God made the beast of the earth after its kind, and the cattle in their kind, and everything that creepeth upon the ground. So we got the stuff that creepeth in the water, and now we got the stuff that creepeth on the ground. I like the Tanakh, but it drives me crazy when it translates the creepeth. Like, and God, everything after its kind, and the earth does this, it creates all this stuff, and God says, wow, that is good. Good. You're with me. All right, you get it. And then the tone changes, and so does the translation. In honesty, I just couldn't do the Tanakh here. They stay very traditional in a way that the rabbis, when they preach on this text, have to spend half their time undoing what the Tanakh does in tradition. And so I'm just not going to go there with it. I use the Message because it's nothing like the Tanakh. God spoke and said, let us make human beings in our image. Who's making this?
Us.
Us. Elohim is plural, you'll remember, but it's always with a singular verb. And it has that sense of a divine court, that the king of the gods is with his other gods, and they're all talking. And Elohim says, I am God. Earth, bring this forward. Water, bring this forward. Earth, do this. And then Elohim says, let us make man in our image. And the word there is not man, it's chadam. Let us make earthling in our image. And God created human beings. He created them godlike, reflecting God's nature. He created them male and female. You've heard this text before, right? You're going to hear it again. We're going to come back and we're going to really talk about it next week a lot. What does it mean to be made in the image of God? What does it mean to be a motto Dei, to borrow the Greek version of that phrase? But what I want you to see is this. God saw everything that he made, and behold, it was not good. It was what? Very good! It was like, wow! Wow! Super wow! Great wow! God makes humans and then goes, God says, wow, wow, very good. Now, they probably didn't look like that, right? Okay? They probably didn't look like that. But the actual picture got degraded over time, so we can't use it anymore. I said that one time in Amarillo in youth group, and one of the kids went, oh, I can see that. And again, this is a narrative. It is meant to tell truth. God says, let us create human beings in our image, and does. And that's the human beings. You don't have names yet. You don't have details yet. All you're told is that God said, let us make them in our image. God-like, male and female. And it happens. There's much more to the story, but we've digested about as much as we dare. Comments, questions, thoughts, inferences, opinions, snide remarks. Preferably not in that order.
I had an epiphany on this story one day when I was driving home from work, and it was rainy, cloudy, almost tornado-ish. There were little clouds hanging down low and moving around, and they were dark compared to the background.
So typical Oklahoma weather.
Typical Oklahoma weather, which I know and I've always understood from my scientific understanding of it's air up there, and air is colliding with air and making clouds and moisture and humidity and all that. And all of a sudden, like when you're looking at an illusion on a piece of paper that can be seen two ways, and it flips and you see the other image, all of a sudden I saw it as the big bowl that was kind of maybe translucent, and there's this almost like Kool-Aid colored stuff pouring over the bowl, and all this swirling happening in this chaotic stuff. And I saw what I understood at that moment to be the way that ancient people may have seen it. And I understood that when the birds flew out from behind a cloud and went back behind another cloud, that could almost be seen as them jumping from the above waters like the fish jump from the below waters. And I had to pull off the side of the road and just sit there and go, wow, because it was amazing. And it really solidified for me how smart these ancient people are, even though they don't have our technology. Right. Or were, even though they didn't have our technology. They really saw the world. They really paid attention. They really made observances and came to conclusions out of it. But that process wasn't what was important. What was important was just, it was, and it was wow.
Well, and part of what grabs me about that is I feel really small in the world. There's so many things I can't do. My roof is falling apart. I can't fix it. I have to pay some dude to come on. You know, my car breaks down. I can't fix it. I got to take it somewhere to fix it. And all that's just in the face of modern technology. How much more would I feel it if I had a shelter that could be blown over every time the wind blows, or that became unstable or untrustworthy every time it rained? If the storm coming didn't mean, oh, we're going to get wet, it meant I might lose our livelihood. If the wrong weather happened, our village may die. How small would you feel? And these folks can look at the world, and because this story speaks truth to them, it gives them courage. God is separating these things out. God is the one pushing these things apart. We can't separate light from darkness. God did. We can't separate land from water. Elohim does. And lest we think we are just trivial things to the world, we are made in the image of God. God stopped to take that kind of care of us. There's days when I need truth that's that simple. All the complicated Greek wrestling I do with Romans doesn't do for me what that does sometimes. I need it. Any other comments or questions? I want to make sure you have time to respond, think, or talk. Please, not everyone.
Are we going to talk about our image, this group more, or is that all you're talking about as far as when God said we'll make them in our image?
We're going to talk about those verses 26 to 31 entirely. Because I also edited some. I left some things out just to get this down. Part of what I want to show you is the order that this happened. And I put this up before, but I had it in the wrong order because I just didn't sleep well that night? Here's your days of creation. Do you see a rhyming this time? Last time I asked you, do you see a rhyming? And I looked at the screen and went, oh, no wonder you don't get it. I've got it in the wrong order. Old age kicks in again. Day 1, day 4, light. Day 2, day 5, the sky and the sea. Day 3 and day 6, the land. There's an order here, but it's a rhyme. It's a poetic order. And part of what's going on is they're saying this is beautiful. This is about, and this is where Steve is brilliant. Steve talks about great art is art that makes you stop and go, whoa. It interrupts you. And this is art that interrupts us. It makes us say,
I do have one comment that I think is really important to make here. And nothing, I don't think there's anything that you can really push scientifically here at all. But there's also space, room here where science can exist when a lot of people want to use this story to say that it can't. In no way would I ever tell you that this story suggests that you need to believe in that biological evolution could be the truth or could be a fact. It doesn't deny it either.
well, and partly, again,
For me, this gives me the opportunity to say, because I'm a scientist at heart, and I believe in evolution. I also believe the story. I can do both.
And part of what's going on here is they aren't answering the question of human origins in terms of Darwinian theology. Right? Did I say call Darwin theology? I'm sorry, I didn't do that. They don't have Darwin. They're not fighting that battle. I've got a video at home by a guy named Ken Ham, who, if you're a creationist, you've probably heard his name before. He's one of those people that travels a lot and speaks in a lot of churches. And he's a nice guy. I've met him. He was in Overland Park. I don't remember if you were together. Anyhow, he came and spoke and did a creation workshop, and it was really good in some ways. But he has a need to make certain words say certain things that the Hebrew just doesn't say. I don't need that fight. I guess where I'm at is I don't need the fight. If you want to debate that, we can. I'm not going to there, honestly. I want to act on faith. I want to let this inform me about how to live. And part of how to live is when I go outside, whether it's sunny or screaming with rain, I know who's in charge. I know who started it. I know who's going to finish it. And I know where God's marbles are. Right? It's an old antiquated phrase. Wow. Let's pray, and then the band's going to come up and lead us in some worship. Creator God, you who started before there was a start, you who began before there was a beginning, you who spoke and reality came into being, we remember you again. And we set ourselves in front of you again as beings who are both created and uncreated, as beings who live in the goodness and greatness of your creation, and as people who wrestle with and struggle with the chaos of our own lives, where things get mixed together in ways they probably shouldn't get mixed together, where there is danger around every turn, where we walk ourselves into all kinds of places of problems, and where we forget who is Elohim, the King of all gods, God above all gods. God, we rejoice with the psalmist who says, praise to the God of all gods. And we give you praise. We worship you this morning. As we drive, as we walk, as we listen, as we speak, as we sing, as we share in communion, and as we listen for your voice, we worship you. In the name of Christ we pray.